Okay, so good morning, everyone. I think one of the things that we did, part of our dry run, was to also do the same kind of concept as our process in terms of the collaboration. So we had an opportunity to work with Ed Services, led by Bill, in terms of being in contact and working on the collaboration effort. We also work with John LaFalce on the IT side in terms of a continued call, weekly call, so that you can see who were in their dry run team. On our campus level, though, we had our campus directors, we had our academic staff that included faculty as well as our support staff, our academic support staff, our advisors, our testing center. We had our admission folks. We'll talk about admission and what we did with admission later on a little bit. And then we have our management team that included career services as well as financial aid. So those are the groups that we had in our team. I think one of the things that our faculty said yesterday was that we wanted to make sure that we change the mindset of our faculty. And how do we do that? I think Fran Felser talked to us a little bit about, in our introduction on Wednesday, about this idea of continuing improvement. As a college and higher education, that is something that we have to do. And so we wanted to talk to our faculty that this is something that we have to do, not only for our college, but for the benefit of our students, that we need to continue to improve our process, and this is the nature that we're in. So we wanted to make sure that they understand this process. I know we used an example yesterday with respect to how we want our students perceive our faculty in the faculty room in terms of when assessments are due or testing an assignment. And one of the things I think we see with our faculty is that our faculty sometimes perceive that we have initiative, that there's a group of people planning those initiatives, sometimes at services, sometimes at senior management. Somebody is doing this to us, you know. So we wanted to separate that concept that this is something that we have to do as a college in terms of continued improvement with our students. And then we talked through the process. I think you heard from our faculty about what we did in terms of talking to realignment, who it involved, how faculty were involved, how deans were involved, and how senior management were involved in that process. I think the other thing that we talked to our faculty about is this whole notion of the beta test. Our faculty were very supportive in that notion that we were going to test this. In the past, we have not done that so well. This is something that we were doing in order to make sure that we were testing this process, and it's something that we want to do, and they were part of that discussion. The second thing that I think we talked a lot about is that we connected realignment to data. Bill talked to us a little bit about the WTFSRs and all the data that we need. So we talked on two levels. One, we talked about our college data, right? We talked about persistent retention and graduation rate and how that impact us. One. The other point that we needed to make sure that we wanted to talk about our campus data. At the end of the day, our faculty need to recognize that it matters to them. This is not something out in the air. This is something that pertains to them. And I think because we did really well with our WTFSR in terms of showing that data to our faculty, it was important that we go back and talk about this. So our discussion revolved around persistent retention and graduation rate within our campus. So for us, at the Buffalo campus, we really talked about that, and we've been talking about this. So again, this was a continued discussion. We digged a little bit deeper with the data. First-term retention. First-term retention for us is a struggle. A lot of us struggle with it. Nearly 50% of our students leave us, right? And that's a problem. And so how do we talk to that? One of the things that Chris and I do a lot is that we talk to our first-term faculty, and we say, well, what's some of the problems that you see why our students leave, right? And typically, it's all the social issues. It's all the things that we have no control over. And I think it's important that we talk through those things with our faculty, because it is something that they are concerned about. However, we have an opportunity to impact differently. And so we did have that discussion, and it was very heated at times. One of the things I think we talked a lot about is that when we ask our faculty why their number is low, and particularly using the WTFSR, typically our first-term faculty say what? What do you say? Students don't come to class. These are first semester students. I teach a first term class. Because of that, I should be excused, right, to be in this number bracket, right? So we get a lot of that. And that's something that we as dean also struggle with, and that we make excuses for our faculty and say, you know what, that's just the first term courses. These are first term students. And so we kind of okay that culture and that language. So we really wanted to talk about what we mean by that and why do we feel that it's okay for us to okay the concept that first term students, it's okay for us to struggle with those. If we're not making those impressions within our first term students, we have a huge problem and we need to talk about that. I know Ann and her team talk a lot about the success rate, right? 24 credits as what? If student reaches a 24 credit, what is that? What's that indication of? Success, right? So we know that, right? Thank you, Darlene. We know that after 2 semesters, our students are on the road to success, right? So we know that that is our spot. So we talked about the reality of our number and where we are so that our faculty can see realignment is the way that we need to focus and the way to go, right? So that's the other piece that we talked a lot about. The other thing that we talked about is that realignment is the backdrop of our academic philosophy. And we spent a lot of time talking about that yesterday, and that is the community of inquiry, that is the 7 principle, all those things that we've been doing as a college and particularly in our faculty and developing our faculty. So we had to talk about that. What it did is that it changed the conversation about, it's no longer about the students. So what do our faculty typically say about our students? What type of students should we get? Better students, right? We need different students. Whose fault is it that we have the type of students that we have? Admission, right? We say, right? But these are things that right? So we needed to talk through. But what that did for us is that we changed the conversation. It's no longer about the student or the type of student, because that is something that we have to deal with, and these are students. Typically, our students come to us with babysitting issues, all these issues, right? The end, right, that we talk about, our commercials say the end in life. We know that they come with a lot of end, right? So that's a given, and that's a fact that we have to accept and deal with, and that's something that we had to talk to our faculty about. So my point here is that we needed to change the conversation to about the faculty in the classroom. And I believe what Bill said earlier is that I think the power is in the classroom. I do think we do a wonderful job to support, student services, all these other things that we do, but I do believe that the power lies in the classroom, and our students are buying the goods of the classroom. Right? So we need to talk to that, and we need to be honest with our faculty that this is something that we do, and this is something that they are part of, and that they have an obligation to it. So what it did is that it shifted the conversation. Instead of about the type of student or the different students that we need to bring, it talked about the art of teaching. Right? What is our responsibility? Right? It lies, there's a lot of power in that when we talk about it is your responsibility. So what you saw yesterday with our faculty, I know a lot of people came to me and Chris and said, we want a Cologne Chris or Alex, or we have a lot of those. We have a lot of those faculty, and I believe part of it is that it's changing the mindset, it's changing the responsibility, and you know what? It's being very honest with our faculty using our data. We have data to prove that we need to do something. And then going back to what I said in terms of what Fran said on Wednesday to all of us is that it's this idea of continued improvement. And our faculty have to be okay with that. We have to be okay with that. And so that's how we position realignment conceptually.
So I will talk about philosophy. After having spoken with all you folks yesterday, I got a lot of questions afterwards about the practicality of it. So I didn't send this to Bill, and I apologize to him ahead of time, but I am going to send this to him and make it available to him afterwards. And if you folks want this, I'm assuming that can also be put up in the ARR. But here's where the practicality lies. And I mentioned yesterday about the need for really what is a long runway to prepare your faculty members for this whole process. So what you have in front of you really is the timeline that we had developed. Paul came to Adim and myself and said, look, we need to think very practically about the runway for this. And we have to think not only about the spring beta, but we also have to start thinking through the fall and the winter and the following spring semesters, because realignment is not just simply something that impacts these 4 new courses. Realignment is something that is impacting, and you heard the curriculum team talk about this over the last 2 days. It is hitting every one of our 100 and 200 level courses. And so this goes beyond just simply preparing faculty members teaching English 102 and COM 104 and Math 101 and INFT 124. So what you have in front of you is actually the timeline. And this is still evolving, still developing. There's actually some subsets or some sub-steps that are in here that are not represented. But back in March of 2016, this was right after Bill and Beth came out to do the all-associate or the faculty training. We came back to our full-time faculty members and recircled and went into more specific details about what realignment was. We reviewed with them the is not documents. We gave them a snapshot of what the new 4 courses were going to look like, but we also made all full-time faculty members aware that this was not just simply a change to the core curriculum, that this was something that was going to impact all of them at some point over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. And so my suggestion to you folks going back to your campuses is to start that dialogue now. Because if you'll notice, we're talking March of 2016, we're moving into June. So we started this conversation, and by the way, when I'm saying March 2016, we're talking like late February, early March. We hit the ground running as quickly and as efficiently as we possibly could. In April 2016, we got more finite down to the actual faculty members that were teaching the beta courses. As soon as the courseware was available from Ed Services that they were deemed ready to be released, we gave that information and we made that information available to our faculty members via OneDrive. We basically said to them, look, read it over. I didn't give them any sort of directions about what to pay attention to, what not to pay attention to. I basically said just look at it and just get a taste of it. Get a general sense of what these courses represent and what they mean. From there, we actually brought the faculty members that were assigned to the courses into a room, and we had them sit down and we walked through a lot of what Bill shared with you. Now, Bill's also being very kind because Bill was with us that day. There were some things that went very well that day. There were also some instances and some things that occurred that where really, in a sense, the train kind of came off the tracks. We did have some faculty members who were resistant initially. One of the comments especially was, we just got this adaptive thing under our belt, both with 097 and 103, why are we changing again? And it was Audiem and I that had to come back to the faculty and say, things got better, but we're still not where we want to be. And so we have to recognize that the way that we have done things in the past is still not going to get us to where we need to get to. So we need to think philosophically about how we can shift again to improve student success so we hit that minimum 30% graduation rate that I know Fran has been, and we as a college have been pushing so strongly going forward. And once we got the faculty members to recognize that, the philosophy, the reason why we were doing this, to Audiem's point, the wheels started turning. Yet there were still some nomenclature issues. The instructors saw units, and they saw the 15-unit course design, and their initial response was, well, then it's a unit a week. And we had this almost 15-minute conversation going back and forth where, well, it's a unit a week or is a week a unit? And I really had to get the faculty members to the point of seeing that the unit design was really chunking the material down, and that in some instances, those units will take one class meeting. You guys heard from the faculty members yesterday, but in some instances, that unit could take 2, 3, 4 class meetings. That is going to be a challenge for you folks when you go back to your campuses. Your faculty members are going to want to see that 15-unit design and think that a unit equals a week. So you're really going to need to drive that point home to them. Yes? Say that again? A unit has a assigned course outcome, and then within that unit are a series of teaching activities that are supposed to take place in support of the course outcome. Exactly. And then getting even deeper into it, then you also will find our assessments that are tied. And they may be a huge major assignment, but they may also be micro assignments in support of the larger assignment. So that's the other part of the scaffolding technique within these courses, is that when the instructors see the course design in the 15 weeks and the assigned assignments that go throughout the course, like for instance, English 102, there may be 5 of them, it doesn't mean that there's an assignment due each week. But they may have to do a small piece that's part of the scaffolding that scaffolds up to the larger assessment. So you really need to get your faculty members to look at the macro first. Get them to understand the big picture of the course, and then start to have them look at the micro and understand how each one of the individual units is not only supporting the course outcome and the assessment, but then is also supporting the entire student experience. And again, that's a philosophical shift for some of our faculty members, because they don't tend to think about things being interrelated. They have a tendency at times to see things in silos. Any of us that have worked with faculty members know what I'm talking about. So they really need to look at this from a comprehensive design perspective. From there, in May 2016, and this was the beginning of term in-service, we showed realignment to all full-time and part-time faculty members. Because if you go back on this timesheet, at the very top, that March 2016 meeting was just with our full-time faculty members at an all-associates meeting. We had a few adjuncts in the room, but not many. It's at the beginning of term in-service that we really gave people a picture of what this beta test was all about. We gave them a piece of the courses, but this is the other really essential piece. We said to the faculty members, this is not just simply impacting the 4 new courses. This is going to be something that all of us are going to play a role with over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. From there, and this is where we're at right now, this meeting actually took place about 10 days ago. Each one of our campus directors in Western New York is heading up a vertical. We have a business and accounting vertical. We have an allied health vertical. Nadia, what's the other one? Allied health. And then legal studies. We have a legal studies vertical. So each dean is tied to a campus director, and each one of them are going to work with individual faculty members to start with, and this is going to start to take place over the next week to 10 days. We're pulling together teams of faculty members, and their first responsibility are those 100-level first-term courses. We're developing the same courseware concept that really Bill has talked about already. Not the is not document, or not the course summary documents, but a supplemental syllabus, a tracking calendar, and the major assessments that meet the is not documents and that meet the philosophy of what realignment's all about. What we have also given to these faculty members is that 15-unit overlay, and we've given them assessment windows. So, for instance, if you look at that document, you're going to see, like in Unit 3, for instance, there's nothing due. In Unit 6, there's nothing due. In Unit 9, there may be 1 or 2 assessments. So what we have said to the program area faculty members, these are your windows. You have a major exam, a major paper, something that's going to require significant work in or out of class. What's that? Not no paper, but project. Whatever that window, whatever it might be, where they have that window, that's where that major assessment can actually take place. And so that's given them an opportunity of seeing how we're trying to take the 4 courses and then that 5th class that's out there, how we can make sure that we're not overloading them and repeating some of the issues that we've had within first-term courses. May 2016, we also showed the faculty members the connection between career life prep and realignment using the e-training that I know Julie Taylor was involved with. In September, so now we're moving forward, our intention is to train all full-time and part-time faculty members regarding the realignment initiative. The full-time, part-time faculty members that are part of these verticals developing these coursewares is a small segment of the faculty members. But at the beginning of term in-service for fall is at that point we're going to start to take what these verticals have developed and start to spread it out among the rest of the faculty members. And the best part about this, and where we have seen success, and you saw it yesterday, it's faculty helping faculty. That has a tendency of demystifying some of this, and it also helps us so it doesn't seem like it's an administrative effort. This is something that we're all doing together in order to be able to get from where we are to where we want to get to. That goes back to the verticals. And then January 2017, as you guys know, we have these 200-level courses that are out there. English 202 is still under development. Math 201 is still under development. There is a second wave of training that I'm going to be responsible for within Western New York, and that is the new sets of courses that tie into the 3rd and 4th semester experiences. But what that also means, though, is that as we move forward with this over the course of the next year or so, we have to continually train our faculty members about these new courseware we're developing for the program area courses. So as I said to you folks yesterday, and I can't stress this enough, this is not going to be as simple as going back to your campuses, having a quick half-hour, 45-minute faculty meeting, and saying, okay, go. this is going to take a runway, not only in preparation for realignment for the 4 courses, but then also really preparing yourselves out over the course of the next 12 months.
Christian, can I just make one point?
Sure.
I just want to stress this again. This was a huge point of learning for all of us, not just Western New York, the system office as well, because I think, and I know I'm beating this one up, but I think we felt that because folks were so enthusiastic, this would not need the runway that it needs. But as you can see, the tone is set. Now the group is coming back in, and look, there's 3 verticals that involve a dean and a campus director, and then Christian's coming in for level 2. I mean, it's faculty driven, but we still have to guide the process because there's just so much, and we have to get there the right way. So I keep coming back to it because I think it's a huge point, and it hit a lot of us in the face all at the same time, myself included. Just as you're thinking, I think those are important things. Again, it doesn't have to be done exactly the same way, but we probably need this kind of guidance and intervention, and I'll go back to Mike's comment. Patience, but guided patience.
Any questions for me before I turn it over to Karen?
So one of the things I was talking with Paul on yesterday, and I like the fact that you talked about separating the unit from the week.
Yes.
Right? And so whenever you walk into a new class for the first time, new course, pacing is always a concern,
Yes.
and knowing how to pace it. And I think having that you have a group that's already run through a dry run, if we could just get an idea from your faculty of, hey, be careful about Unit 8, that's the 3-week unit.
Yes.
Or watch out for Unit 10, that's the one you need to make sure is done by week 9 because the rest take a long time.
Yeah.
So any additional support we can get on that helps our faculty when we go back to talk to them.
Yeah.
1, just break that right away that a unit is not a week,
Yeah.
but 2, gives them a really good idea
Yeah.
of how long some of these units take.
2 comments to that. Number 1, the supplemental syllabi and tracking calendars that we've provided to Bill at least give the instructors to start off with kind of the ideal. I know when I build course materials and tracking calendars every semester, I'm idealized. I'm thinking this is going to be great. We're going to get through this material at this pace, and then the semester starts and all hell breaks loose. So what we've also been doing and giving Bill feedback on through those feedback forms is exactly that. Where we have found instances where units have been a little bit more challenging, or to maybe require a little more time than what we had expected, we've given him that feedback and it's contained there. So, great question. Other questions or thoughts? Okay, now let's scare the hell out of all of you. Go ahead, Jen.
Now, the faculty you've been using, have they been adjuncts or have they been full-time?
Great question. So I have, and I give Paul and Adiam and Mike and Marvel a ton of credit for this. We've been very well supported over the last 6 years with our faculty members. Right now, because of the number of full-time faculty members we have, all of the sections are being taught by full-time faculty with one exception. And that is our 124 section that's being taught at Southtowns by one of our highest IFID scored adjuncts in INFT 123.
One of my major concerns, and it's more just a watch point,
Yep.
it's not a complaint, is making sure these adjuncts that we're going to have to use because, we have only so many full-time,
Yep.
that they are properly integrated in
Yep.
and informed to the level we need them to be informed
Yep.
when they're working for other places and can only give us this much time. So if they can't physically be there, can we provide videos like you referred to? Can we tape our own meetings and allow them to review the meetings? I mean, what strategies? But if you've only got one, and she's
Well, it's one for this term, but to Jan's point, and I'm very sensitive to what you just talked about, because even with the number of full-time faculty members we have in Western New York, we're still very reliant on adjuncts, just like the rest of you folks are. My plan going forward, and I've done this with every major initiative so far, once I've got what I would think of as a faculty champion who really understands this down to the very micro level, literally maybe a minute of a class meeting, I will take that individual, and because, let's use math as an example. I know enough math to be dangerous. Although last time I took an NCRC, I scored higher in math than I did in reading for information, which I told Beth this. It gave me a huge identity crisis, but that's a whole other conversation within itself. But what I've been very careful with is that I get like Elena Cerisi or Heidi Young or James Jennings up to speed first with that math course, and then they become that champion content area expert, and I pair the two of them together. I will talk the broad general philosophy with the instructor, but then when it comes to the nitty-gritty, that's where I charge that full-time faculty member to help me out.
We do some mentoring that way with faculty too. But,
Yep.
you know, we're talking one-to-many now.
Yep.
In a real dramatic way. So
Yep.
it is something that's on.
So you're really, and what I've had to do is I've had to scale that to exactly what you just said.
I'm back here, Jan, because this has come up in a couple of areas. I think it's a huge really. And with adjuncts, we really have two issues. Working backwards, there's the sustainability piece, which it sounds like many of you have accommodated for that in different ways outside of realignment. But it still will be there. I think to Jan's point, to get this started, adjunct will be at a disadvantage when they can't participate fully in an integrated meeting, or they can't participate fully in those weekly meetings. So I think we are going to have to get pretty creative. I'm glad you brought it up, and I don't see it as a complaint. We've got a plan for it.
Anybody else? Karen?
So I know you're all sitting there wondering, how does online do it? We have about 380 faculty, 70 of which are first-term instructors. So how is online going to train 70 to 380 faculty all across the United States and get that same synergy that Western New York has with their faculty in the sharing of information, the sharing of documents, how all the courses integrate, how do we share best practices? Well, we have a way. So working with Chris, Don, and Brandy, we had decided that, and if you guys don't know, our model for teaching online first-term courses is a co-teaching model. And what that is our class sizes are 35 students, and 2 faculty teach that course. We have a primary instructor and we have a co-teacher. So for our pilots right now going on, we have only 2 classes, INFT 124 and COM 104. We used a subject matter expert who is an adjunct now, Lauren Hackford, who was a full-time, but she stepped down as an adjunct. And we have Bill Savaros at the Parma campus teaching IMT 124. And we paired them with our student services academic success coach and an academic advisor. So we're trying to bring in, not only through faculty, we are bringing in our academic advising team as well to be part of our training for our faculty. So what we did is we created a first-term cafe, is what we call them, in Blackboard. And in there, we put that wonderful career life packet positioning paper that Shauna did, put it in there. We put in the course overlays. I call them blueprints. And so we're going to put in our student services and our faculty. We're going to be teaching this for September, all of those 70. And what we're going to do is we're going to have dialogue with them about their interpretation of seeing the blueprints first, trying to understand the career life prep positioning packet and what it means. And then we're creating 4 sandboxes, and we're putting all of our student services and our faculty in those sandboxes so they can see the content and how all the content has been built with all 4 courses. Now, they haven't even taught yet, so this is just prior to them teaching. We're going to have more dialogue. Then we're going to have a WebEx call with those pilot faculty right now and the advisors on their experience, and we're going to record it. And then we're going to take those recordings and we're going to put them in that first-term cafe for the faculty that couldn't be there. So maybe there's some ideas, Jan. So those faculty who couldn't be part of that discussion, because of course, we're all across the United States, different time zones, or give you this much time. And then from there, right, so those faculty are all going to be in those cafes, and we're still going to carry on that dialogue, and then we're going to schedule them. And how we're going to schedule them is a primary, and then we're going to schedule a co-teacher. And hopefully, depending on the credentials of each of the faculty, if they teach the COM 104 in September, they will teach INFT 124 in November. And hopefully, if they're English credentials, can teach the English 102. So now faculty get to see it. They saw the blueprints, they saw it come to life in the sandbox, and now they're going to apply it. They're going to see it and see how it integrates. And continuously, it doesn't end there. In that faculty first-term cafe, they're going to still keep dialoguing, sharing best practices, sharing their supplemental syllabus, sharing their ideas that they've learned, or some tips and tricks, or it could be Unit 5 has been challenging. How did you overcome it in this section to help other faculty? So, and it's continuous, and it doesn't stop there. So, and then that cafe, which is going to be really good in Blackboard, is for when we have new faculty, right? When those new faculty come on board, they're going to go through that same experience. They're going to get in there with their faculty cohort, and they're going to dialogue. They're going to read the CLP packet. They're going to look at the course overlay and see the blueprints and see the courses. And that's going to, we recruit every 7.5 weeks faculty. So we don't sit there with, you know, nobody in the cafes. So, and then, of course, like Christian and Ani and what they're doing, we're going to be doing the same thing. We've been, since January, in our through our faculty meetings asynchronously, we have been preparing our faculty about curriculum realignment. And we've been doing it in small chunks. So we have been speaking this language since January about the why behind it, where we're going, our vision. And so that packet makes it a great, you know, ties it all together for faculty to have a tangible takeaway, or when they're sitting out there by themselves, to kind of look at, read, and get an understanding, or in case you kind of get it, get in that faculty cafe and ask a question, you know, get it in there. And so that's where we're going to put up our resources and things like that. So that's how online's going to do it with the faculty composite that we have. And right now, I think it's really important, too, for them to hear the experiences that our faculty and advisors are going through right now. Because we work very, very closely. And you know, two things are definitely going to make this happen. It's teamwork. You know, like Chris and our team really coming together, even with career services, admissions, the whole entire department, you know, and leadership. You've got to, your deans have to be in there. You have to have your program directors in there. And it's constant, continuous improvement and evolution. So any questions?
One point, while you're thinking about your questions, you know, Doreen spoke in a couple of different forums yesterday that online will be implementing fully in November. And one of the points of learning, you know, Karen spoke about kind of all how these courses fit together. One of the points of learning we came to was identifying that if we built in those cross checks, so take, you know, Garrett's example yesterday of mentioning, well, gosh, I knew this is going on in English. We're going to take this little bit of extra time and actually build those into the courses. So to Karen's point, when folks are in the sandbox, some of that crossover will already be built into the course in a deeper way than it is today, as well as the overview. So I think, again, I wanted to share, these are the types of things that we're learning through the dry run, and some we can correct immediately, and you heard a lot about that yesterday from the folks teaching and from Paul and Doreen in our other session. Today, so I wanted to mention the findings that Christian and others helped us with, as well as what we learned through online, that was just going to take a little bit longer, but all good stuff, really good stuff.
Karen, a question. When the faculty are in the cafe and your program directors and you and other managers are participating, is that where you identify active engagement of your instructors might qualify somebody to be a lead instructor versus a secondary? I mean, how are you making that?
Oh, how do we determine who's a primary and who's a co? It's through all those reports. We look at their the classroom evaluation, how successful they are teaching a first-term course, because many of them are going to be your COM 115 instructors or the INFT 123 as they currently are. And if they've been successful, they're going to start out as our lead primary instructors. Sometimes we pair them with, like I said, when they're credentialed, Chris's team has a lot of advisors that have master's degrees that are credentialed, so they come in as co-teachers. And then we look at those that might be a little at-risk faculty who might struggle or who are newer. We'll be paired up with our strongest first-term faculty. So we really narrow down. We run about, I would say 15 sections of COM 115 right now, about 15 to INFT 124. So we've got about 30 to 40 sections of those running, and so that's 80 faculty. So we're really looking at who is our lead, who are the best of the best, putting the right faculty in the right course, and helping. And it's a great, faculty love it because they share a lot of ideas, and they get to see how others teach the same exact class, but just in a different, methodology that they use or a different approach. So any other questions? Good.
I think that the only last thing that I think it's important to point out is that with our campus directors, we work closely with admission, and particularly our beta. 60% of our new students is part of the beta. So we wanted to make sure that they didn't see that they were this test group and that they were the special group. So we wanted to be very careful about what we communicated. I know Paul Barr was very diligent about talking to us about making sure that our students don't see that they were separate and that we were treating them differently in terms of the experience that they were getting. So it was really critical for us to educate admission. We had multiple meetings with admission to talk to. And again, with admission, same thing that we do with our faculty, is all data driven. We need to talk to them about why is it that they bring so many of our students then that we can't keep them to the next semester. And so we talked a lot about that and the benefit of our realignment, the benefit of our placement test, and the success, our failure rate with foundation. That number for Buffalo is really huge. So we really talked through that, but it took a couple of phases with admission to talk through that process. Equally, we needed to make sure that we bring our academic advisor in the conversation, as well as our learning center, our testing individuals. We had to talk with them as well. I think what worked really well for us was that we needed to do these meetings in separation, but in phases, so that everyone understood that these students were having the ultimate experience and the purpose why we were doing this. So it was very key that we needed to do that, as well as an advisement. Some of the things that we're doing to follow up with those students right now is making sure that we have a weekly meeting with our academic advisors. We're looking at attendance. As Bill said, we do have it in terms of the class attendance, but also individual attendance and talking to the students and interviewing those students to see that they're not seeing things a little bit different. Is it appropriate for them? Are they seeing it to be too easy, too difficult, too complex? What is it that we need? So we coach our academic advisors to really talk to those students as they're pre-advising. So that whole process continues, not only with faculty, but also with the other support staff. So that's the other thing that we've been working on. Any questions on admission? I really believe that piece with admission and academic is so huge in terms of how students are introduced into this whole process in the classes and the importance of it. So that's one of the main things that we did at the beginning before we even started talking to faculty.
I received some comments and cards of people saying, we really want to make sure there isn't a disconnect. So to audience point, I'm wondering, even in ARR, if this is the admissions message for faculty to hear that, a video or whatever, so that they build on it.
Yes.
So maybe that's something to work on.
Absolutely, absolutely.